Welcome into the Diamond Falls podcast, back in action with my guy, Eric Cain. And Eric, we do have quite a bit to discuss because since we last spoke on the Diamond Falls podcast, Tennessee has become SEC champions. They are the SEC regular season champions for the first time in 27 years with a win over Georgia, two wins over Georgia over the weekend, and a couple of Arkansas losses, courtesy of Vanderbilt. Tennessee is SEC regular season champions for the first time since they went back to back in 1994 and 1995, the fourth time ever because they also did so in 1951. One heck of an accomplishment.
Yeah, and I mean, it was only a matter of time, right? I mean, Tennessee under Tony Vitello just kept getting better and better and better and better. And then now, I mean, they're great. They're the best team in the country. And so the work they put in earlier in the season allowed them to lock up the SEC East last weekend, allowed them to lock up the SEC this weekend against a good team in Georgia. And so quite an accomplishment. First time in 27 years. So that is definitely something to celebrate for sure.
Right. And I know there's other goals to be won, and that has certainly been the message from the players and the coaches. But this is something that should truly be appreciated. And I know it's kind of hard to walk the line of appreciating it in the moment, but also understanding that there are bigger goals to be had. But to me, it's more impressive to win the regular season title than the SEC tournament. I've long said that, both for baseball and basketball. Mm-hmm. Like, it's still impressive to win the SEC tournament, don't get me wrong. But to me, it shows just how great of a team you are when you can run through the SEC schedule over the course of 3 months rather than just simply getting hot over the course of a week at a tournament. So I think this is something that Tennessee itself, the team, the players, the coaches, the support staff, and then also the fans should be very proud of, because yes, they needed Arkansas to lose over the weekend, but it's not because Tennessee had not done something. It was just because they were trying to clinch early rather on the final day of the regular season, kind of like what we talked about with winning the SEC East. Tennessee won the SEC regular season title because it was 5-for-5 at home, did not lose a home series in conference play. They swept their most important opponents, both in the division and then from the West as well, going on the road and sweeping Ole Miss. And then you take 2 of 3 from Auburn, you take 2 of 3 from Alabama. So this to me is a pretty significant accomplishment that we'll look back on and talk for years about.
Yeah, for sure. And again, it's exactly, in my opinion, obviously this is much bigger. This is winning your conference. This is not just winning your division. So it is bigger for sure. But it is like the conversation we had last week. It doesn't happen. This has not been routine quite some time for Tennessee baseball. And so you recognize it, you celebrate it, you pat yourself on the back because you have earned it. But as Tony Vitello and the players and the staff have mentioned, you still get a lot of baseball to play, hopefully, and everything. But this is not nothing. This is really, really cool. And you saw this happening, the first couple of seasons under Tony Vitello, because the program was in just such a turnaround. So just a dominant team for so much of this year. Obviously, the best team in the country still, in my opinion, and able to lock it up on the next to last weekend of the regular season. So that's really, really cool.
Yeah, and today, when all of the polls come out, Tennessee will be back to being unanimously number one. There were 3 polls that dropped them. 3 out of the 6 dropped them to number 2, which I hate the way polls work so much. A team loses, so we must punish them by dropping them. When in reality, okay, Tennessee lost its first series of the season, but their body of work still points to them being the best team in the country. So why are we dropping them in the polls? I hate how that works, Eric.
It's just part of it, right? It's recency bias. I'm thankful that Tennessee didn't drop in the polls. And you might remember, I can't remember who Tennessee had that weekend, but when Tennessee lost to Tennessee Tech at Smokey Stadium, it's like, I think Tennessee went 2-2 on that week. Maybe that was
it was Alabama, I believe.
Yeah, Alabama. And so I thought Tennessee might drop in the polls then, just because, again, recency bias, went 2-2 on the entire week and all that, but it didn't, which was good to see. But Kentucky was a bad team. It was bad, no doubt about it. I still thought Tennessee was the best team in the country following that weekend. Just had a bad weekend, but it is what it is. We see it in every sport. We see it in basketball. We see it in football, and we see it in baseball as well.
We certainly do, but Tennessee is back to being unanimously number one. At least I am going to be under the assumption that they will be. I've already seen one. We're recording this around 11 a.m. I saw Baseball America put Tennessee back up at number one. And the reason I'm assuming that Tennessee will be back to being unanimously number one is because the team that jumped them, Oregon State, was swept by Arizona this weekend. So, yeah. And Tennessee beat basically a top 25 Georgia team 2 out of 3 at home. And again, I think people who are new to college baseball are still struggling with this concept based off of the frustration that I saw from the game 3 loss to Georgia. It's about winning series. It's not about sweeping series. Unfortunately, I guess it's unfortunately. It's also a good thing, but Tennessee, this Tennessee team, last year's Tennessee team, this program has now set a ridiculously high standard for itself. And that is a good thing because that means you've had success. But on the flip side of that, everybody flips out when one day of baseball doesn't go your way. And it can be very annoying because fanatics, aka fans, they do tend to take it over the top. So to me, there was a little bit of an overreaction to the game 3 loss. And are they going to drop in the polls? And no, they're not going to drop in the polls. They lost one game. They won the series. That's what matters in college baseball. Coaches and players, they are going for the series win. It's no different than Major League Baseball. No different. And Tennessee this season, every weekend except for Kentucky weekend, has taken care of business and won its series.
Yeah, and keep in mind, too, I mean, you're at the point of the season where you're starting to mix things up, rest some guys, get these freshmen some rest. I mean, you saw Chase Burns did not get the start on Thursday nights. Saw Drew Beam, Burns came out of the bullpen as well, but, Beam came out of the bullpen on Sunday, and we'll get to more on that, but you had one of your top relievers, start that game. So you're not following your normal blueprint as well right now in order to get everybody nearing as rested and 100% as you can entering postseason play. So, yeah, again, and I've said this a couple of times too, like a lot of people compare football loss is a big loss, right? You only get 12 games in a regular season. So a loss, it weighs heavy, right? A loss doesn't weigh as heavy in basketball. A loss certainly doesn't weigh as heavy in baseball. It's about, winning the series. So as long as you win these series, which Tennessee's done, as you pointed out, every single series this season, with the exception of one on the road where, and again, that's the sport, right? You're allowed to have one or two of those a year as long as you bounce back the right way, which Tennessee has. Tennessee's, racking up those series win, and that's what's important. And you look at that overall record still, even after the game 3 loss on Saturday, gosh, 45-7 is spectacular. 22-5 looks even better in this conference.
Yes. And again, it's a blessing and a curse.
Yeah.
99% a blessing to have the size of the fan base that Tennessee has.
Because the expectations are always going to be through the roof.
Yes, but the point that I'm getting at is some of overreaction. It's that 1% that is overreacting, and because of social media, because of message boards, they are a loud majority. It seems like, when in reality, 99% of the fan base understands the concept of how this thing is working. But also, as you mentioned, Tennessee just has this particular baseball program at the moment has set such high expectations for itself, which is great, and rightfully so. Expectations should change with the success that Tennessee is having. That was my talking point all of last season. Like, Tennessee's doing all these things for the first time, and it feels good. It feels good now, but at some point they're going to have to really pay it off and win in a big way, just because expectations will change. And I didn't necessarily think that it would be this season that it would be demanding that you achieve those expectations so quickly. But here we are. Eric, you mentioned the pitching. Aside from Tennessee winning the SEC, That was the biggest storyline of the weekend. The pitching decisions. Tony Vitello, Frank Anderson, they decide to go with Chase Dollander in game 1 on Thursday. They decide to pitch Blade Tidwell in game 2. Going into the weekend, it was to be determined as to who was going to pitch the series finale on Saturday. Tony Vitello said that around midnight the night before of the series finale, he decided to go with Ben Joyce and slept on it. And when he woke up, he felt the same feeling that, hey, let's give Ben Joyce a start. And talking about an overreaction because of one loss, there was an overreaction to Tennessee losing the series finale because the thought process by some was, hey, Drew Beam starting the series finale has worked all year long. Why go away from it? And I understand that thought process, but what I don't understand is that it was so evident that there were changes to the pitching staff and pitching plans for the weekend for the sole purpose of resting Drew Beam and Chase Burns. That was the sole purpose of this weekend's pitching changes and pitching shakeups. I don't understand the criticism of going away from Drew Beam on Saturday. And it's not like Ben Joyce wasn't deserving of that start or was not capable of pitching well in that game. And he only pitched 4 innings, and 3 out of the 4 innings, he was very dominant. It was the 4th inning that Georgia was able to get to him. And again, he could have kept pitching if it was an NCAA tournament or early in the season, but because you don't need to tax him too much right now, he's not going to pitch more than 4 innings. So I just, the criticism for the pitching shakeup has been mind-boggling to me, Eric, because it was so evident based off of how Burns and Beam has pitched their last couple of outings, and then added on with Tony's comments, which I'll share here in a moment, but want to give you the floor first. Just those combination of things, it was mind-boggling to me to see people so frustrated with the pitching decisions over the weekend.
And look what happened in Kentucky last weekend, right? I mean, you saw, Dollander came back. Of course, he had missed a couple of starts, but he came back. He came out of the pen. Now he pitched more than, of course, Chase Burns and Drew Beam did this weekend, but they were starting to do it last weekend. They're taking those steps to rest these guys. And it sounds like a broken record. We've been talking about it all year. I mean, at the end of the day, Chase Burns is incredible as ever, but he's still a true freshman. Drew Beam has not pitched in 2 years. And so this is a lot of stress and a lot of innings on an arm, putting into high leverage situations. So I just feel like if you think back to Kentucky, last weekend, that, those were indications that, okay, we're starting to take the steps these last couple weekends of the season to ensure our guys are getting ready to row. So it's going to look a little bit different. And then once you get into postseason, Ben, that's something we talked about a little bit as well. It might not be the routine Burns, Dollander, Beam, or Tidwell or whatever, because you might set it up to where you want Dollander to pitch elimination or however you want to spin it. So it's going to be a little funky, but these guys are still going to pitch. And so, at the end of the day, Burns, one inning and 2/3, gave up a run, 29 pitches. 29 pitches, that's huge. Beam, not great. Okay, and we'll get to that. I understand that, but he threw 15 pitches, right? He'll have a bullpen this weekend. He's still going to be fine and ready to go, but just, resting up that arm was the number one goal this weekend, was still getting those guys a little bit of work, and they were able to accomplish that. So I'm with you. And when you have these arms, when you have all these options, you still go out there and you have a chance every single game to win. It's not like you're just throwing away a game, right? Typically, a lot of time we say, we're just going to throw bullpen this game. Well, when Tennessee throws bullpen, you got a pretty good chance of winning that ball game because Tennessee's bullpen has a lot of arms and they're good. So, yeah, I'm with you on that. It's a little bit of overreaction, but at the end of the day, there's a purpose behind it. And, Frank Anderson has done it a time or two.
And technically, it's not like it's not like the plan didn't work. They took 2 or 3 from a good Georgia baseball team that should make some noise in the NCAA tournament.
and you were winning 3-1 with your quote unquote bullpen game going in game 3 with Joyce looking really, really good. Of course, had that 4th inning, but everything was going according to plan.
Right. Chase Dollander looked freaking awesome in game 1. Georgia's lineup now, Georgia's pitching staff is terrible on paper. Entering the weekend during conference play, Georgia had the second worst ERA of any team in the SEC. So their pitching has been their downfall. Their hitting has been what has carried them. I can't remember off the top of my head. I'm not looking at it at the moment, but second best batting average entering the weekend in conference play. I believe second most hits, second highest OBP. They are very strong offensively, and Chase Dollander made them look silly on Thursday. Made them look awful hitters, look like awful hitters in that game one. So I don't see how you could say the plan didn't work when they took 2 of 3 from a top 25-ish Georgia team, and Chase Dollander looked good. And Tony Vitello was convicted that Blake Tidwell made progress this weekend. And Blade was good for the most part in his outing on Saturday. He pitched 4 innings. He did give up 3 walks, which was very frustrating, especially when 2 of the 3 walks were with 2 outs. You just can't do that. But he had 6 strikeouts, only gave up 1 run, 4 hits, and threw 84 pitches. And after the game, Tony said that he could throw 100 pitches if he wanted to. Or if they needed him to, I should say. And Tony, after the game, said, hey, he made progress tonight. And then he came back after the weekend, after the finale, and was asked, hey, what do you take away from your pitching staff this weekend? And he said, Blake Tidwell made progress. And I said it last night. I felt even more so that he made progress when I went back and looked at the video. So it seems like Blake Tidwell is about to turn a corner. We'll see this weekend at Mississippi State. And then, again, Ben Joyce, he was good for – not good. He was great for 3 of the 4 innings that he pitched. He did run into trouble in that 4th inning, giving up 3 runs on back-to-back home runs, threw 67 pitches. Again, could have thrown more if you were in a game in which he needed to throw more, but just no reason to overtax him in this outing. So I don't know how you can say the plan didn't work when the plan did work. They won, and for the most part, the starters looked good. Joyce and Tidwell maybe weren't dominant, but they looked good for most of their outing.
Yep, I would agree. And, the bullpen for the most part in that game did a pretty good job. Walsh struggled on Sunday, but Walsh looked good on Friday nights. You had Will Mabry that got back in there and pitched a scoreless inning, so that was good to see. Beam got roughed up a little bit, but the bullpen on Saturday as well. I mean, I know we're talking about kind of how how the pitchers were aligned. The bullpen on Friday, was fantastic after Tidwell exited after 4 innings and 84 pitches. Sewell, McLaughlin, and Connell all look good too. So, yeah, it worked, and there's a strategy behind it. And of course, we'll have to see what it might look like, this upcoming weekend with this regular season finale. If maybe Tidwell will get some rest, or I doubt it because he didn't pitch for half the season. So kind of what might that look like heading into Hoover? So, we'll have to see. But I think there'll be another twist to it as well, heading into the SEC tournament, because I think that you're just trying to ensure that all your guys are ready to roll. So I didn't, I wasn't, I thought it went all according to plan. I wasn't shocked by anything really. Everything made sense to me, I guess, and kind of how Tony Vitello kind of attacked this weekend with the arms.
Yes. Now, I was surprised that Ben Joyce started the series finale. I know you were too.
Yeah, in terms of like who would get the ball first.
Yes.
Yeah, you're right. But in terms of
I think he can start.
And again, Tony Vitello said that he can be a starting pitcher. They just don't really want to do that with him, right, because they're thinking about his future and all that. And he, depending on the franchise that takes him, he might be a starting pitcher potentially. So yeah, I was surprised that it was him that started. But of course, the thought process about that game 3 in general, I wasn't surprised by it.
And I like the move to start Joyce. If your goal for the weekend is to rest Drew Beam and rest Chase Burns, why not? You've been saying all season that he could start for you. Why not give him a start?
Yeah.
And again, people see the radar gun and think, oh, that arm can't start. But what people don't understand, if you followed along all season long and listened to Tony's comments, or if you've just laid eyes on Ben Joyce in a non-creepy way, you realize that he is a specimen. He is a freak. He is just he is chiseled as chiseled can get, and like he was created in a weight room, and because of his physique, it allows him, even at the speed in which he is pitching with, the velocity in which he is throwing with, what he has done in the weight room and how he has transformed his body into this specimen. He can go out there and throw 70 pitches like he did on Saturday in game 3. He can start. And Tony Vitello has been emphasizing that all season. So if the goal is to rest Beam and Burns, and you know he's capable of doing that, why not give him a crack at it? I was surprised by the decision, but I liked the decision when I saw it. And even despite that one bad inning, I still like the decision in hindsight.
Also, Cain and Sewell threw 51 pitches just the day before as well. So now, of course, Tony's kind of already knew that he was going to go with Joyce the next day. So that probably altered his decision to go ahead and let Sewell throw a lot the day before. So that kind of makes sense. But, with resting those guys, with Sewell, who's a guy that can also go out there, Tony said a couple of times that he could go out there and start some games. He would probably be that other option. Seacrest, probably getting the ball on Tuesday. You didn't have, it made even more sense when you really dive down into it and see about the availability of these arms. Why not throw Ben Joyce out there? And again, looked really, really good there for a while, and then ran into some trouble in the fourth and could have stayed in, as you pointed out. But why do that when you already have the series intact and a lot of baseball left to play?
And you never know when you may need to start him in the postseason.
Mm-hmm.
So a couple other things with the pitching staff and those decisions this weekend. And again, this podcast is going to be pitching heavy because that was the conversation coming out of the weekend, and just another ho-hum offensive performance for the Vols over the weekend. Looked pretty good on Friday or Thursday and Friday, game 1 and game 2, and then struggled in game 3. We'll touch on that before we get out of here, but we are going to spend the majority of this pod discussing the pitching because, as I have continued to emphasize, it was the storyline outside of Tennessee winning the SEC this weekend. And I want to be more Drew Beam and Chase Burns specific now. Tony Vitello said after Saturday, Burns and Beam could have started this weekend, but I prefer to not ask them to shoulder the load for every week of the season. Might be different if COVID hadn't impacted their high school career. We want them to run through the finish line instead of stumble. That tells you all you need to know about the thinking behind the decisions for this weekend and the goals for the weekend. And I don't understand how anybody could disagree with that thought process. As I mentioned earlier, it's been evident that Chase Burns, Drew Beam have been tailing off the last couple of outings. And I do think it was the freshman wall coming into play. Physically, mentally, I think that's what it was. And entering the weekend, Burns and Beam were the only two Tennessee pitchers with over 60 innings on the season. The two freshmen who Tony Vitello pointed out, their junior seasons didn't take place because of COVID. That was with Chase Burns and Drew Beam. And then, as we've talked about all year, after not being able to pitch his junior year because of COVID, Drew Beam couldn't pitch his senior year because of Tommy John. And then they come into their true freshman season, and they are the one constant in Tennessee's rotation throughout the entire season up until this point because of the Blade Tidwell injury, because of Chase Dollander being struck by the line drive against Alabama. They've been the one constant. And because they are true freshmen trying to carry this new large workload, they have started to wear down. It's been pretty evident the last couple of weeks. So I don't understand how anybody could disagree with the thought process that those guys need a rest. I mean, it is so – I mean, I commend – honestly, I commend – and I'm not trying to carry Tony's water here or Frank's water here, but I commend them for making that decision because year after year after year, we see college baseball coaches ride these young arms until they fall off or until they just fall flat. And Tony Vitello and Frank Anderson are trying to avoid that situation of where they get into the postseason and these arms that they have relied on all season long fall flat because they just wore down because they overused them the entire season. And it's like one person responded to me tweeting out that quote and said, well, he gave away a sweep with those decisions. Again, you're not going to right. You're not going to sweep every weekend. You already have everything locked up. You don't need to sweep. You need to be preparing, not even for Hoover. You need to be preparing for the NCAA tournament and your run at a national championship. And again, I continue to say it. I just don't understand how anybody could not understand the thought process behind the decisions this weekend, and B, not agree with the decisions.
And we might not know this yet. We might not have the answers. Tony might not even know this yet. But I mean, we should expect to see something like this again this weekend, right? I mean, maybe not to the extent, maybe not both of them. Maybe I don't know. But again, we should expect to see those guys getting a little bit more rest this weekend. Maybe not as much. Again, just to preserve the arms a little. At least that's what I'm thinking, right? I mean, it's not going to be your normal 1, 2, 3, and then maybe having the other one come and piggyback like we've seen in weekends past. I expect there to be some wrinkle like this again this weekend because, again, like you said, you've wrapped up everything. There's nothing left to do in the regular season, right? There's 3 more wins, and I get it. 3 more wins is better than 3 more losses. You're not going to be swept, but I expect there to be another wrinkle this weekend.
Right. And I loved Tony's comment. I think it was after game 1. He said something along the lines of, I'm paraphrasing, it doesn't matter. All 4 guys will start all 4 games in Hoover. Yeah. and I love that quote because of mainly the confidence in him to say the 4 games in Hoover.
Yeah.
As if A, that they are going to play until Sunday, and then B, technically they could play 5 because he's saying 4 because they'll play Wednesday. If they win Wednesday, and again, it's double elimination for those who are not familiar with the SEC tournament. So they're guaranteed to play Wednesday and Thursday. If they win both Wednesday and Thursday, they don't play on Friday. So not only is Tony referencing them playing into Sunday, but he's also assuming that they're not going to play on that Friday because they took care of business on Wednesday and Thursday. So I'll be curious to see what the pitching looks like this weekend, Eric. I think that's a good point. I just don't understand how anybody could not agree with the thought process of Burns and Beam needed rest this weekend. And here's the other positive, not just the rest. And I don't think that this is the reason the decision was made. We've detailed why the decision was made, but the cherry on top, I guess you could say, or an added unintended benefit of making this decision is that you now have a Chase Burns and Drew Beam that know what it's like to come out of the bullpen. Yep. And that can be so advantageous in the postseason because, again, year after year after year in the NCAA tournament and even at the professional level.
In Major League Baseball, you see it all the time. Now, the greats can do it. That's why, the Scherzers, Kershaw got over his postseason woes. He's done it a little bit. I mean, the greats can adapt. Some of these starting pitchers, as you were getting to before I cut you off, you need to win a game. You want to close the door shut. You bring them out of the bullpen, and it's not great. And now think about this. All 4 of these guys have now come out of the pen this year. So you're exactly right. I love that.
Yes, it's an added benefit that if for some reason, maybe you've taxed your bullpen already that weekend, but for whatever reason that may pop up, and you play so many games in Omaha, if you are successful, you just don't know what pitching situation is going to pop up. And you see it year after year, a starter like a Chase Dollander, a Blade Tidwell, or maybe a Burns or a Beam. They'll come in the 8th inning and get an out or come in and close the game. You see this happen often. And boy, I would much rather Drew Beam have his first bullpen outing, especially in hindsight, this weekend against Georgia with the way it went, rather than in Omaha when the season is on the line. So now theoretically, Beam should be able to handle coming out of the bullpen much better than he did. So that's another positive to the rest. Now, as upbeat and as glass half full as I have been about these pitching decisions, I do have one worry, Eric. And again, I still think they made the right decision. And I'm not a ton worried about this possible negative effect, but just the tinkering with the routine worries me in the sense of, will these arms be able to get back on schedule, get back on track like they were the first half of the year? Will the over tinkering mess up mess up their rhythm, I guess? Like, will Drew Beam be able to bounce back mentally and physically from coming out of the bullpen, and Chase Burns as well? That's my concern, is that these roles have kind of been shifted, and what will that do going forward? Will they be able to seamlessly move back into those roles? That's my one concern.
Yeah, and that's valid, but like the schedule in terms of the playing format, was always going to change. Of course, it worked out in Tennessee's favor, I guess, at least because you got the series Thursday, Friday, and Saturday all in one group at the end of the regular season, so that it changed, but then it was the same. But I mean, you're going to play on Wednesday, you're going to play on Thursday, Friday. I mean, some of these regional, I believe in the regional, you start playing on a Thursday, right? And then super regional, it's a weekend series. I get that.
It's Thursday or Friday.
Yeah,
half the regionals will start on Thursday, other half on. It's like the NCAA tournament in basketball. Start on Thursday, half start on Friday.
It was always going to change to a degree, but I know what you're saying in terms of bullpen starting, what days your bullpen and all that, when you get in those extra innings in. And baseball players, especially pitchers, creatures of habit, right? But I mean, you look at some of the best and most successful college baseball teams, they found a way to deal with it, and Tennessee will find a way to deal with it. I'm certain. So I'm intrigued to see what it looks like too, because there will have to be a lot of decisions being made on, who's going to go in what game. Are you going to set up to play, defense in a sense, and in terms of waiting for, a Dolander to throw against elimination, or, whatever the case may be? Are you going to, who's going to be that fourth starter? You're going to wait to throw Tidwell as be that fourth starter, or Beam, or, whatever. I mean, there's a lot more decisions and chess, moves to be made. So we'll have to see what happens, but I'm with you on that, but it was always going to change a little bit.
Yeah. So that is my one concern with all the shakeup on the pitching staff, or is how are these guys able to get back within their routine? Hopefully it doesn't just completely throw them off. And look, Tennessee can afford to make these adjustments or make these decisions for the long haul, because they have positioned themselves to where they can do these things. They can experiment, because they've already locked up the East. They've already won the SEC regular season title, and they've already locked up the number 1 overall seed in Hoover. So they can afford to experiment. I just hope the experimenting doesn't come back to bite them in the butt. But again, I'll say this in hindsight, even if it does prove to maybe hamper them down the road, I will still maintain that I think it was a requirement that Drew Beam and Chase Burns get a little rest, or are shut down a little bit, because they were wearing down. And I thought Tony Vitello summed it up perfectly, Eric. They want them running through the finish line, not stumbling. And they were on the verge of stumbling and costing you in the postseason. You needed to recharge their batteries. I mean, it's just that simple to me.
Made sense on too many levels for me. Yeah, I couldn't agree more.
Let's talk about this Tennessee offense that had a pretty solid weekend overall. In game 1, 5 runs on 9 hits, just kind of ho-hum. I thought the story of that game was Chase Dolander being dominant on the mound. We discussed his dominance on the mound, or mentioned it in passing earlier in the pod, but 6 innings, 6 strikeouts, no walks, 77 pitches. So you get him in, get him some good work, and also give him a little bit of a rest. only at 77 pitches, could have kept him out there, but no need to push it. And then Chase Burns comes in, and he looks good in his first inning, then runs into trouble in his second inning, which was the eighth. He did strike out 3, did not allow any walks, but did give up a run on 2 hits. I thought you could already see Chase Burns look a little bit more fresh coming in out of the bullpen. And then Redmond Walsh comes in and picks up his 6th save of the season, the 22nd save of his career. He's now 1 behind Todd Helton for most in career program history, which is pretty remarkable. But offensively, Trey Lipscomb, he hits a home run in the bottom of the second, his 20th of the season. Jordan Beck hit into an RBI ground out. And this was also the Blake Burke game, Eric Cain. Blake Burke, just 2 mammoth home runs. He hit a home run in the bottom of the 4th. He hit a home run in the bottom of the 7th. And not only were they mammoth home runs, we've seen Blake Burke hit mammoth home runs this season. What I liked most about it, Eric, was that it was in a close game against legitimate competition. We kind of had not seen that just yet from Blake Burke, and he got the start in game 1, and boy, did he take advantage of it.
Yeah, he really did. And the note you put in here in your 4 quick takes following that game 1 win, 54 at-bats on the season, 9 home runs, 4 homers in 15 at-bats during SEC play. We were doing this with Christian Moore earlier in the season, man, just talking about, gosh, it's incredible what he's doing, 7 or 8 home runs at 36 at-bats or whatever that was at the time. We talked about his swing too. His swing is beautiful, and he can't even find at-bats in this lineup, right? But when you get an opportunity, take advantage of it. He certainly did. So that was my biggest takeaway from game 1. Sure, Dollander looked awesome. That was great to see. Burns got some work. But, after that game, when I was reading over the notes on Thursday night, I was like, gosh, and you and I have spoken on this. I'm pretty sure I was texting you during the midweek. I'm like, dude, Blake Burke is going to be so freaking good. It's not even funny. And so, yeah, he just continues to impress, man. More and more and more quality depth. And these guys that are struggling to find a batch right now, there's going to be a lot of openings next year. We don't have to talk about that right now. There's plenty of time for that, but he'll be a guy that'll benefit from that for sure.
Absolutely. He'll be Tennessee's 4-hole hitter next year.
I would imagine.
3-hole hitter. I don't even know what this roster is going to look like, but maybe Christian Moore, Blake Burke hitting 3-4 back to back.
I think they'll be in the heart of the order together in some shape or fashion.
Yeah. You have Kyle Booker at the top, Seth Stevenson probably at the top, Jared Dickey somewhere in there. I could see Jared Dickey being a 3-hole hitter.
I was going to say Dickey will be in there somewhere too. I don't see long-term Dickey being a leadoff guy. I could see him being a heart of the order guy.
Yeah. And they will add transfers inevitably as well. So kind of hard to piece together.
Got to find a catcher again, but
yes.
Anyway,
we'll have plenty of time to discuss that. Game 2 was much more of an offensive outburst for Tennessee, scoring 9 runs on the evening on 14 hits. And the story of that game, Cainer, was that Tennessee got to Jonathan Cannon, Georgia's ace, a possible first-round pick. He goes 4.1 innings. He allowed 10 hits, which tied a season high. He allowed 6 runs in the game, which was the most he's given up all year. He allowed 2 walks, which tied a season high. And his 4.1 innings of work was the shortest outing of the season. Pretty remarkable how they were able to get to him. I heard Georgia's coach talk after the game, and he said that he was not able to command the fastball as well. And as a result, the slider was not working either, so did not have his typical command. And I believe in the outing against Vanderbilt prior to Tennessee, he threw like 110 pitches. So it would make sense as to why he was worn down and unable to command his fastball or slider against Tennessee. But Tennessee, it took until the 4th inning to get to him. Georgia actually led off the game with a home run to center field. And then in the 4th inning, Tennessee scores 3 runs. Jarrell Ortega doubles down the line. And then Evan Russell hits his first of 2 home runs. Evan Russell then hit a home run in the 7th inning for his second of the game. You also had a Luke Lipsius home run. You had a second Jarrell Ortega RBI hit. This one an RBI single to center field. Cortland Lawson walked with the bases loaded. Jarrell Ortega had his third RBI hit in the sixth inning, a single through the right side, and then Jarrell then came around to score on a wild pitch later in the inning. And what I loved most about Jarrell's game, Eric, Jarrell and Evan sparked the offense. They drove in 6 of the 9 runs on the evening. Evan Russell doing Evan Russell things and hitting 2 home runs in a game. But Jarrell, what I loved most about Jarrell is his RBI double in the 4th inning was down the left field line. He hit it to left field. Then he steps up in the 5th inning and bloops an RBI single to center field. And then he steps up the next inning in the bottom of the 6th and hits an RBI single to right field. Left field, center field, right field, all accounted for. And boy, does that speak to the hitter that Jarrell Ortega is.
Yeah, it just goes to show you how far he's come, right? Good hitters can hit wherever they want, and being able to spray it all over the field, that's a sign of a really, really good hitter, and you're seeing that in him. But, as much as we talked about pitching in the series overall, yes, I like what the bullpen did in game 2. Tidwell, we mentioned Tony's comments saying that he looks like he is progressing and all that. So there are some notes about pitching as well. Sewell put through 51 pitches. But I thought this was, all about the bats. The bats were like relatively quiet this week, but I mean, they exploded on, game 2. As you mentioned, Evan Russell, Jarrell Ortega. You had 5 guys with multiple hits. You had 3 guys drive in multiple runs, of course, 3 of which from Russell and Ortega, 2 of which came from Lipsius, right? In that game. Nope, I'm exaggerating. Lipsius just drove in 1, but nonetheless, it was a good day offensively for Tennessee in game 2. And, it shows you why Tennessee won that game by 7 runs and scored 9 on the day. So really good offensive day on Friday for Tennessee in game 2 of the series.
Yes. And as we discussed, Blake Tidwell showing signs of improvement and getting back to looking like Blake Tidwell. It really does feel like he's about to turn a corner, whether it's this weekend against Mississippi State, whether it's in Hoover. It seems like we are on the verge of seeing vintage Blake Tidwell. And folks do have to remind themselves this was his 3rd start of the year, 2nd legitimate start or something along those lines, close to those numbers. What he is doing, this is like his preseason. This is his spring training. This is his first half of the season. Remember, Eric, in February and early March when everybody was saying, "Oh, when Blade gets back, Chase Dolander's the guy that's coming out of the rotation for me." Remember everybody making those comments because Chase didn't look bad. Dolander didn't look bad, but he was not looking as good as Burns or Beam. And so naturally everybody was saying, well, he's the guy that's got to come out when Blade gets back. Well, that was Chase getting used to pitching at Tennessee and early in the season. And now look at him. He's the arm that I trust most on the staff and Tennessee's best pitcher, in my opinion. So I think Blake Tidwell, maybe to, a little more struggles than what Chase battled through early in the year. But my point is that I think Blake Tidwell is going through what Chase Dolander went through at the beginning of the season, and the switch is about to flip for him. And when it does, he's going to look like the first round pick everybody anticipated coming into the season.
Yeah, I agree. And he's started 6 games technically, but he's thrown in 9. But I mean, to your point, he's still going through his ramping up process, still going through that all the other pitchers have already done. And I apparently offended somebody on the podcast last week when you and I both said that we believe that Dolander is the guy. I mean, he's so impressive, and I couldn't agree more. And there were points in times early in the season when guys were running bases on him, and he was giving up. He was only going through 5 innings because he always throws. He's a strikeout pitcher, so his pitch count's so high that he looked kind of rocky a little bit too. And so, I mean, baseball's a long season. It's a process, right? And Blake Tidwell is kind of on the verge of the back end of kind of getting into his groove, because Dolander certainly in his groove. We've seen Burns in his groove at points and times, Beam especially too. It's an embarrassment of riches, but I agree. I think Tidwell is on the verge of being the guy. And as we both pointed out last week as well, Tennessee's going to win a national championship. You're going to have good Blade Tidwell, whether that means, starting, going 6 or 7 innings, whether that means coming out of the bullpen, pitching 4 or 5, shutout innings, whatever that means. You're going to have good Blade Tidwell to win a championship. So getting him on the verge of pitching his best, and he's got first round stuff, and again, so that's it's no shock whatsoever. So that's good to see that he's on the right path, hitting up with Dolander, who's pitching better than anybody right now, resting the other two, and hopefully getting them back to where they looked at midway through the season a couple weeks ago.
Aside from Evan Russell and Jarrell Artiga sparking the offense and Blake Tidwell starting and Camden Sewell looking good, the other noteworthy item to me is that Mark McLaughlin and Kirby Connell, they also looked good. Now, they came in and pitched when the game was essentially out of reach for Georgia, but Mark McLaughlin, he pitched the 8th inning, did not allow a hit, did not give up a walk, faced 3 batters in the inning through 9 pitches, 2 flyouts, 1 ground out. And then Kirby Connell, he comes in for the 9th inning and he strikes out 2 of the 3 that he sees, did not allow a walk or a hit, either 10 strikes on 14 pitches. So Kirby and McLaughlin looked really good to round out that game. And then on Sunday, the 7th inning was the story of that one. Tennessee did jump out to an early lead. They led 2-0. Drew Gilbert singled up the middle. Luke Lipsius hit a homer in the 2nd inning. And then Georgia did tie it off of Ben Joyce there in the 4th inning. Actually, they took the lead because they hit back-to-back home runs in the 4th inning. They hit a 2-run home run, and they also hit a solo home run. Cortland Lawson was able to walk with the bases loaded in the bottom half of the inning to tie it. So it was 3-3 for the 5th and the 6th inning. And then the 7th inning, when Drew Beam came in, Georgia was able to get to him 3 consecutive singles with a 1 out. Redmond Walsh comes in. He's not able to stop the bleeding. He gives up a single that scores 2. And that was after a beautiful sacrifice bunt from Ben Anderson to score the runner from 3rd. And then later in the inning, Connor Tate hit a 2-run home run off of Redmond. So Ben Joyce in the top of the 4th and Drew Beam in the top of the 7th was the story there, just not being able to get out of the innings.
Yeah, and again, that happens. And I would much rather Drew Beam come out, and that's just a whole nother process, right? I mean, you're sitting down there, you have to get up, you got to stretch, you got to toss, you got to get on the mound, you got to start throwing. I mean, and again, it sounds so simple, but especially for a young guy that's never done it before, or even an old guy that's never done it before and having to do that, much would rather see that happening now, so he knows what to expect, than in 2 or 3 weeks from now, right? So that was good to see, but overall, just a couple bad innings for Tennessee on Sunday, or Saturday, excuse me. Gosh, I'm never going to get used to these Thursday, Friday, Saturdays. I will this weekend, and then, well, it's over with then after that. But nonetheless, just a couple bad innings, but Tennessee had a plan, followed that plan, already had the series. And, I'm like you, seeing Joyce, start that game, it was, you know, about intimidation, right? I mean, everybody talks about just the velo that he has and everything, and rightfully so. That's the sticking point. But gosh, just having to, first time through the order, having to face that guy, that is tough sailing. So if he ever does eventually becomes a starting pitcher, it'll be interesting to see. They wanted to have Aroldis Chapman be a starter early in his career too, and then obviously he kind of settled in and becoming a closer because he was so good at it. I'm intrigued to see what happens with Ben Choice, but that's a conversation for another day.
I am fascinated as well. The other talking point before we get out of here is that the offense looked abysmal in that finale. They were particularly awful with runners on base and runners in scoring position. 4 of the 9 leadoff batters for the game reached base. They only had 5 hits, but there were plenty of runners on base because they drew 6 walks. So only 5 hits, but they had 11 base runners because of 6 walks from Georgia, but they just were not able to hit at all with those runners on base. 2 for 13 with runners on, 1 for 8 with runners in scoring position. The 2 ugly stats that just make me want to puke: 0 for 3 with the bases loaded, 0 for 3 with runners on third, less than 2 outs. That's just simply not winning baseball whatsoever. It's
Yeah,
just not winning baseball.
anytime you have runners at third, just 90 feet away with less than 2 outs, I mean, just the most unproductive at bat you could possibly have. Because all you need is to get the ball in the outfield. All you need, right? Because the majority of the time, especially at this level, you're going to send them, right? I mean, it doesn't have to be that deep of a fly ball. You're going to send them. So that is very frustrating, but it does happen. Anytime this team manages only 5 hits, it's like, goodness, that's a bad day. But what you do with those runners on, or the lack of what you did with those runners on, that's the frustrating thing about Game 3.
Yes, 5 for 30 overall hitting for the game, which comes out to be a 167 batting average.
Not great.
Then they were 1 for 9 with 2 outs. 2 out hitting, runners on base, runners in scoring position. It was abysmal. And what made it so abysmal was the fact that they struck out 12 times on the afternoon. 6 of them they struck out looking. 6 of the 12 strikeouts were looking, and there were at least 3 or 4 in which they struck out looking on pitches down the middle. It was just really, really bad baseball, but that is also the game of baseball. Again, a lot of people frustrated with that happening,
especially with how aggressive this team is to begin with. That's first, because that's uncharacteristic luck. And also, you talk about 5 hits. I mean, Drew Gilbert had 2 of them, right? So I mean, it's just up and down the lineup outside of Gilbert. Just not a great day.
No, not at all. So it happens to the best of them.
Yeah.
The Yankees and the Mets, 2 best teams in baseball right now. I guarantee you, I promise you that over the course of this week, they will have one game in which it looks like they've never played baseball before in their life. It just happens. Professional level, you play 162 games in which it's a sport in which you are intended to fail at. So it happens. This baseball team,
you get a hit,
probably going to play
70
games.
Yeah, you get a hit 3 out of 10 chances, and you are a good baseball hitter. That's just I love that in all of sports. That's like the thing that probably sticks out to me the most. You fail 7 times out of 10, and you're great. Like, that's just so wild.
Yes. So major league guys, they play 162. They're going to fail because they play so many games. College baseball, you play a ton of games compared to football, to basketball. And again, it's a sport in which it is intended that you fail. So that they are going to have games like this. Now, they are 5-4 over their last 9 SEC games. That is what Brent Hubbs told me in our Around the Horn on Saturday after the final game. And he asked me, how concerning is that? And my response was that you've got to be a little bit concerned when you hear that. How can you not be at least a little bit concerned? But 2 of those losses were in Lexington, where the circumstances were just miserable. And I think you do have to take that into consideration, especially when Tennessee turned around and in its next 2 games looked phenomenal in Game 1 and Game 2 against Georgia. And again, it's all about series wins. And although they may be 5-4 in their last 9 SEC games, they've won 3 out of their last 4 SEC series. And at the end of the day, that is all that matters. So, Eric, it'll be another short week. Thursday, Friday, Saturday. It's the regular season finale. Tennessee will be in Starkville Thursday, Friday, Saturday against Mississippi State, the mecca of college baseball when you look at that stadium that they have there. And they've had crowds of 14,000 people on numerous occasions this season. So I'm excited to get down there and check out that environment. Mississippi State, not a very good baseball team. Won the national championship last year. Probably going to miss the SEC tournament a year later. They're going to go from winning the national championship to missing out on the SEC tournament. They're last in the SEC West. They are not good because of injuries and maybe a little frustration within that locker room to this point in the season. So,
I bet.
Yeah. So
and
Tennessee should handle business this weekend.
Yeah, and you know that everybody's going to come out to see the Vols too, right? So I mean, I like you. I expect that environment just to be off the chain,
I'll be there. And
as the
Eric,
kids would say
because you're a kid,
in
Eric and
2004.
I will be back with you this week. Unable to squeeze in a preview pod last week. Eric and I were both traveling, but we will make sure we get one in this week for sure. And then it's postseason baseball, man. Postseason baseball. I can't believe it is already here. Tennessee plays Belmont tomorrow night, Tuesday night, last midweek game of the season. Hallelujah. Praise the Lord. Thank you, sweet baby Jesus. I made it through another season of midweek baseball games.
And Tennessee was so good this year. You can't just go there for the 8th and 9th inning and then, do media and go home, right? And you got to be there for first pitch, because when you're the best team in the country, I mean, you can't miss anything, right?
Yet there are still media members that do that. There are media members who show up as the final out of the game is being recorded and shows up to post-game media, takes quotes, asks questions, tweets out stuff as if they were there the whole game. And yet the public does not know. I know, but the public does not know that they're not sitting through the games like they are intending on social media.
Not great. I'll tell you what, the pandemic ruined all. Yeah, it's a conversation for another. The pandemic ruined, covering sports, because there's still video being sent out, and that should never be the case anymore. I'll just say that. That's a different conversation, but I'll say that. I know you feel the same way. So nonetheless,
especially when I'm the only one on the road and same privileges are still being emailed out. But that's a little behind the curtain peek at the media world here in Knoxville. But for Eric Cain, I am Ben McKee. We'll be back with you later on this week. And until we speak again, we hope you all have a great start to your week.